Hey everyone, Emmy here, also known as 8vinyllow, bringing all of you another video. Today's video is going to be a response to Anthony over at Gambler812. If you are not familiar with Anthony's channel, I'm going to go link him down below. He has a great channel, he puts out great content, and very recently posted a video that intrigued me. And I thought as I was kind of watching this and listening to him that I wanted to jump in and kind of share my thoughts in response as well. Anthony recently posted a video, basically I think a way to get his subscribers to get to know him a little bit better outside of his little kind of pocket, right? In the vinyl community, I think that everybody's in some way or another, they're in certain pockets, right? I am the Cheap Trick girl, I'm sure, right? You guys know that I love British blues and blues music. I love power pop. But what are some other genres, artists, and bands that I don't talk about on this channel a lot that I am actually really into? And so that's what Anthony did in his video. He showcased 3 different artists, bands, genres that he doesn't really talk about on his channel, that he enjoys. And when he posted that and I watched the video, I was like, I am so in. This is a great, great theme for a video. So again, Anthony, Gambler812, gonna link him down below. But this is going to be my response. What are 5 different artists and bands in my record collection that might surprise you? Now, I feel like everybody on their musical journey falls into different rabbit holes throughout, right? Right now, I'm very much into power pop. I've always kind of been a power pop girl. That music, that genre has always resonated with me. But there were times, right, I was in, and I still am, I'm in those pockets of British blues and power pop and things like that. But there was a time where I was deep in the rabbit hole of punk rock. Now, I love punk music. I am a punk rocker girl. Maybe some of you knew that if you've been watching me for a while, but if you are fairly new to this channel, that might surprise you. And so a handful of years ago, I fell deep into the punk rock rabbit hole. And one of my favorite bands as I was kind of going through this exploration was a band out of New Jersey called the Misfits. The Misfits get a lot of love in the vinyl community, I know that, but I don't think outside of maybe showcasing some pickups in previous videos a handful of years ago, I don't think I've talked about them a lot on this channel. But this is a band that I really enjoy. I enjoy the punk rock genre. I can get into hardcore punk. I like the proto-punk a lot. I could also get into post-hardcore punk, horror punk in the case of the Misfits, right? So I definitely kind of extend to all different subgenres of the punk sphere. But the Misfits is definitely the one that came to mind when I was thinking about this, right? I also could have done Fugazi, but this one came to mind the most. Now, this album, compilation album, this is a great compilation to have if you want to dip your toes into the Misfits and you haven't really done so before. This covers material from the 70s, 80s, different singles, EP stuff, things like that. But I would say that this compilation, again, if you aren't into the Misfits or maybe want to dip your toes into it, definitely recommend grabbing this. It's also called Collection. I have Collection 2 as well, which I will showcase. But this compilation definitely kind of solidified the band's legacy and introduced them to a broader audience. And so this compilation in general was the comp and album that really got me deep into wanting to listen to and explore the Misfits a little bit more. So maybe this surprised some of you, maybe it didn't, but this one definitely stood out. So not only do I have that, I have a couple of other Misfits albums. I have Collection 2, which is great. I have this kind of unofficial bootleg release, this live recording. This is called Hate Breeders, unofficial release. And then a later Misfits that's really enjoyable, Famous Monsters. Now, a genre that I don't really dabble with too often is country. And that's still the case. I'm not a huge country girl. I'm not a country hater, but I'm not a huge country person. That's probably one of the last genres that I tend to veer towards in terms of listening, collecting, and so on. But an artist that I absolutely love and adore and probably have about 10 or so albums of his is this man right here, Johnny Cash. Again, I don't talk about country at all on this channel, but this was also a major rabbit hole for me. When the youngest members of the VC went to Nashville on our first summer trip, we all, I think, kind of fell into the Johnny Cash sphere and had this major addiction listening to Johnny Cash for a while. And that stems to different connections and the connection to visiting the Johnny Cash Museum and just all of that Nashville area. But Johnny Cash was an artist a handful of years ago that I really dug into his discography and started collecting albums when I go out to stores and things like that. So you can't go wrong, right? Of course, I'm showcasing Folsom Prison. You can't go wrong with that. Love Johnny. He has that distinct voice. He has that wonderful storytelling, which is just absolutely addictive. Over time, he became very versatile in his music, spanning different genres, whether country, folk, gospel, and so on. Now, I really love early Johnny Cash. So if I'm going to listen to country, I'm probably going to go towards older country. But I love older Johnny Cash. I love his first couple of albums. I'm actually going to show his debut on Sun here in a second, which is one of my favorites. I also enjoy later Johnny Cash, right? You cannot go wrong with those American recordings. I just don't have them on vinyl. I need to pick them up at some point. But you cannot go wrong with Folsom Prison. So this was an album that I listened to all the time and still pull from time to time to listen to. I really, really enjoy that. I kind of alluded to this here while talking about it, but Cash's debut on Sun is another one of my kind of go-to Johnny Cash albums. Another one that I love on Columbia is the Fabulous Johnny Cash. Again, right, kind of the early Johnny Cash is what I lean towards. And then the other one that I pulled, and I have about probably 7 or 8 more in my collection, but I also really enjoyed this one. There's also the youngest members of the VC connection with the song The Legend of John Henry's Hammer. So I had to pull that to share as well, because this was an album and that was a song that we listened to a lot, that I have kind of a deep connection with. This is Blood, Sweat, and Tears on that 2-Eyed Columbia. So Johnny Cash, another artist and kind of older country that you may not have known I was into. The jazz universe is an area that I've not really touched yet, just because there's so much involved with it that when I want to actually really dig deep into the jazz genre, I have to do so with like full attention and intent. So that's not an area that I've really touched outside of like classics, like some Miles Davis and some John Coltrane and so on. Now, this artist that I'm going to show is one of my go-to jazz albums. I probably have 10 or 15 different jazz albums in my collection. I do enjoy jazz a lot, but again, I just haven't really dug into that genre. But the one album that I'm going to show and the artist that I'm going to show is my go-to, for the most part, jazz album. When I kind of sit down in my music room and I say to myself, I want to listen to jazz today, I find myself pulling this one the most. And it has a really cool story with it as well. But the album that I am talking about is Thelonious Monk, Monk's Dream, from 1963, jazz pianist. Again, I'm not well versed in the jazz sphere. There are people that are doctors of, they have their PhD in jazz. But I, especially in the vinyl community, but I don't really know, again, outside of certain classics. And this is a classic in and of itself. But I love this album. Genuinely has really become, over the last handful of years, one of my favorite albums. I go to this one the most. Fun little backstory about this. This is actually, I found this album for $1 at the thrift store. It is 2-Eyed Columbia, and it was $1. And I didn't really know, I knew the name Thelonious Monk, okay. And I saw this album and I'm like, oh, I've seen that cover before. Now this was probably about 6 years ago or so. And I thought, for $1, I'm gonna grab it. It looks semi-clean. Came home, cleaned it up, played it, plays VG, but for $1, doesn't get any better than that. Why I love this album is that, and I'm kind of looking at the track list here on some of the songs, it really highlights the innovative approach to jazz. And to me, that's really, really cool. Monk's Dream, Bright Mississippi, those are the standout tracks to hear on me. It has that exceptional musicianship that I really appreciate. It has a very dynamic sound, and so that's why I'm drawn to this album. So again, right, not huge into jazz, don't know a lot about different jazz artists. People can just like you're probably, some of you are looking at me holding this album up and are probably like, oh, this person, and this person plays on it, because in the jazz world, right, like everything is interconnected and everybody plays on everything with each other. But I love this album, Monk's Dream. I don't know if you guys knew that I love this, but this is a surprise, I hope, as well. Another genre that I know virtually, absolutely nothing about is electronic ambient music. Now, Bill at the Vinylverse, that's a totally different story. He's basically my educator in that world. I still haven't really explored it that much. It's not really my realm, but he knows everything and anything, and I learned so much from watching his videos on these type of albums and topics. But a band, and in particular an album in my collection that I probably reach for and listen to once every couple months, which is a lot for not really I guess, enjoying this genre. Again, I enjoy all different genres. I enjoy electronic and ambient music. I'm just not, it's not my go-to thing, right? But an album, surprisingly, and this one almost like surprises me, I think I'm surprising myself, that I really, really like, and it's a live album, it's not even a studio album, that I really like, is this German electronic band, Tangerine Dream. Okay, people in the vinyl community, especially if they're into this type of ambient, space rock, electronic music, they love Tangerine Dream. So that's how I knew about them. And then probably about 5 years ago or so, I was at a record fair and I saw this, and I've seen people show this album before. It was like $10, and I was like, you know what? I am going to grab this. But this came out in 1977. It was part of their kind of North American tour, and it falls perfectly into that electronic genre. Don't know anything about it. I remember the first time I put this on, I was thinking, what the heck am I listening to? And then I put it on again, and I was like, okay. And then I put it on again, and I said, you know what? This is kind of enjoyable. So I don't know what kind of drew me to this album in particular. I guess it's just kind of the familiar album cover and just knowing, I've heard the name Tangerine Dream before. But the fact that I still have this and haven't purged it or anything like that showcases how much I actually really enjoyed this album. So I do like this album. I don't know a lot about electronic music, but Tangerine Dream, live, 1977, North American tour. I dig this stuff. The last genre and band that I'm going to talk about that hopefully might surprise some of you is psychedelic music, specifically your mind-bending experimental psych, not psych pop, not even like psych rock, your experimentation, I would say. This is an album that a lot of people in the vinyl community were talking about a handful of years ago when it came out, because it got a reissue. It was one of those kind of private press, originally 1971 private press release that over the years, especially those in the psychedelic world, it kind of created like a cult following. And so when this got reissued, it was reissued by Modern Harmonic. A lot of people picked this up, and I was one of those people that was very intrigued by this album. Psych rock band from, I believe, Arizona, that released this in 1971, got that private press, got its first reissue a handful of years ago that a lot of people kind of were excited about. I gained appreciation over the years. Obviously, when this first came out, no one had a clue, but definitely gained appreciation over the years. It's extremely mind-bending psych, innovative, experimental, a lot of different techniques and textured manipulation and things like that on here. It's also like surfy and garage rocky, but very psychedelic, very, in a way, schizophrenic. And I enjoy psychedelic music a lot, again, like these other genres. I just haven't really dug into that world. And with psych music, outside of maybe, again, some psych pop and some psych rock, your classics, like these type of hidden gem psychedelic records, I have no idea. But this album, picked it up, and it has been my go-to kind of psychedelic album in my collection, which I have a handful, but this one in particular is my go-to out of all of them. When this first came out, I think I mentioned this in a video, and I had a lot of great things to say, and so handful of years later, all of those great things still stand true. I love this album. This is a great psychedelic, surfadelic release. So, Kennel Miss, Folkstone Prism, maybe this surprised you. If you have this album, let me know. If you're intrigued by this album, also let me know. So those are 5 different artists, bands, genres in my collection that I hope surprised you. Let me know down below in the comments if any of my picks today surprised you, if you already knew something about me with these picks, but definitely let me know if any of these kind of stood out to you here in this video. Again, thank you to Anthony over at Gambler 812 for coming up with this idea. Really enjoyed it. Again, I was so intrigued when you posted that video. I love that video so much. I wanted to hop on and do it. Go check out Anthony's channel down below. But that is all I have for this video. I will see you guys for my next video. Bye, guys.